It's another Thursday. My name is Ammishaddai Ofori, and today you are tuning in to the Ghana Innovation Journal's Innovator Spotlight. If you have been tuning in this whole month, you have realized that we are doing a cover on the Ghana Fintech journey. We have interviewed some amazing people who started way back in the early 90s in Ghana, introducing the concept of startups, of technology companies. And today, we have another exciting guest. This man has been involved in the hard decisions being made by government. He's been involved in regulatory works, and he's had a preview to what large companies have been up to when it comes to fintech in Ghana. Today, my guest is Ebenezer Yalley. He's the Ghana director for the fintech magazine Africa. Help me welcome Ebenezer. Ebenezer, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. And good evening to all your viewers.
Thank you, Ebenezer. Ebenezer is no stranger to the screen. He has his own YouTube channel that talks about data inclusion, data financial inclusion, and a list of others. But one of the most amazing articles that I have read on the Ghana FinTech journey was also from Ebenezer, where he discussed all the way from the beginning concepts like e-transact that we used to have some months ago, and how it evolved. And Ebenezer, that was delightful to read. Can you please tell us a bit about that eye-opening statement article that you wrote, and how concepts like e-transact came into play? If you can quickly walk us through Ghana's fintech journey from your perspective.
Right. Thank you very much once again, Ammishaddai Ofori, and to all your viewers. Essentially, what my article sought to do was to capture the very beginning of the fintech industry in Ghana, more or less, and how the industry has basically grown to this particular point in the industry. Today, we can see that nobody really talks about what it was in the beginning. But I must say that the revolution started somewhere in 2006 in terms of how consumers actually took up fintech related products, and was quite a hard nut to crack at that time. I got myself involved in the industry around 2009 while I
Okay.
was an undergrad in the University of Ghana, and I had the
Mm,
opportunity to get a contract opportunity. I got a contract job, I should say, with eTransact at the time.
okay.
Now, eTransact originated from Nigeria, and
Mm,
they brought in some new products in terms of digital financial services. I remember we had a backstripe card, which more or
mm,
less was acting as the wallet. So the earlier forms of mobile money, for instance, began
right.
from this point, I must say. And clearly, sometimes we miss it. So this card actually basically served as more or less like the wallet. And then
Mm,
we were able to actually retail these cards. So I
mm,
was basically like at the forefront, more or less as a sales executive,
right.
engaging consumers and trying to pitch the product to them. And the
Okay.
adoption rate was quite slow because I mean people basically couldn't really get into the kind of groove that we wanted, if you
Mm,
like,
mm,
and we had to basically engage, re-engage, convince
yes.
consumers to take up these products. So
And
so
this was
that
just
is that
totally
is
new, right?
absolutely, it was totally new to
Mm,
the market. And so
mm,
just as I said, this was a Max Stripe card which which actually came with a set of syntaxes, SMS
yeah,
syntaxes.
I
So you
remember that.
really have to put together those SMS syntaxes, and then once you do that, you set that to a short code based on your
Okay.
network. And so we
Even the
had
name
flyers.
syntax sounds complicated. There was no way people were going to adopt this easily. How did you
Absolutely.
find that? Yes.
Absolutely. So clearly, I mean, just a mixed spelling of this XML syntax meant that your transactions would never terminate.
Oh
That
dear
was what it
Lord.
meant. So we basically had to guide consumers to get a grip of the SMS syntaxes. So
Mm,
basic transactions such as airtime top up,
Yes.
DSTV bill payment, uh, checking your balance,
Uh-huh.
and the basics were just done with the SMS syntax. And just as
Syntax.
I mentioned, you just needed to make sure that you don't miss it. Once you
Mm.
mix it, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's the end. Your transaction will not terminate, so to speak. Then that will mean that you need to come back and probably get it really done properly. Now, I must say that at this same during the same period,
Uh-huh.
this platform was also on a Java-enabled phone. So
Oh.
for those who had feature phones, who
Mm-hmm.
felt that they could not really use the SMS, uh, in terms of those who had feature phones, I should say,
Yes.
relied on their feature phones, and then those
Okay.
who had the Java-enabled phones, who basically were like the smartphone consumers at the time,
Right. Right.
also relied on the use of the Java phones. But there
Uh,
was a caveat. In all these instances, shortcodes could not be taken out.
mm-hmm.
So, for
Mm-hmm.
instance, a simple Tigo shortcode will be 1407.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then, so
Mm-hmm.
once you are done, then you terminate the transaction via the shortcode. And then you
Okay.
receive value in terms of what transaction you want to do. But also, with this same platform was another structure or system.
Uh-huh.
Essentially, where the platform relied on banks. So because it
Okay.
was a prepaid platform, just like mobile money,
Mm-hmm.
there were no agents at the time. The proliferation of agents was not as we have it today. There were few agents in terms of banks. So the banks were more or less like the partners. So you basically one needed to pick up a card, walk to a bank branch, any of the
Mm.
designated bank branches or designated bank partners to load their cards. And
Oh
then that is
wow.
when you receive value. And then once you receive value, you can go ahead and transact with the value. So just as I mentioned in my article, the earlier forms of electronic money issuer actually came through this platform and
Mm.
would take the pace of the industry
Yeah.
to the stage where mobile money then erupted and created a lot of verve in the ecosystem.
Mm. Ebenezer, what an insightful exposition. And this was 2006. This was 18 years ago. You had captured the idea of leveraging USSD and also getting people with feature phones to find a way to get value, like you mentioned. Can we take a step back and can you walk us through the regulations and the policies that have influenced the timelines of Ghana's fintech journey? So you back in 2006 may have seen what was working, what was not working. What other regulations and policies have been issued from then till now that you have seen has significantly influenced Ghana's fintech journey?
Right. Thank you, Ammishaddai. So I must say that I was actually in the mix of regulation management at a point. The major regulation that actually helped to manage the ecosystem was essentially the first ones, which were EMI guidelines or electronic money issuer guidelines.
Okay.
But I must say that the industry actually leapfrogged regulation at a
Okay.
point. So regulation
How
had
so?
to, the
Mm.
regulator quickly had to put together a set of policies to guide the industry.
Mm.
So the EMI guidelines or the electronic money issuer guidelines
Mm.
dictated how the ecosystem will fare. And I
Okay.
remember um, uh, very basic things like agency management in terms of
Mm.
how consumers can actually pick up products with a certain
Okay.
limit of
Okay.
transactions, where you
Mm.
have the minimum KYC, the
Mm-hmm.
medium KYC, and the enhanced KYC was
Okay.
dominant in this policy. Now,
Mm.
moving on, when the industry evolved to a certain point, we
Mm.
then had the Payment Systems Act. But I must say that
Okay.
Payment Systems Department of the Bank of Ghana
Mm-hmm.
hitherto was at the Banking and Supervision Department of the Bank of Ghana. So we
Okay.
didn't have, as an industry, a standalone uh,
Right.
like department that
Yes.
managed payment systems.
Payment systems.
It
Okay.
rather evolved from the Banking and Supervision Department. And that was when Payment Systems Department came up. And today we
Mm.
can even say that there's a fintech and innovation office as well, complementing payment systems department. So
Oh,
those were
yes.
pretty much the regulations that were present at the time.
Mm,
Today you can see that based on the Payment Systems Act, we
yes.
have a very clear set of guidelines in terms of the classes of fintechs, where
Mm,
you have different examples of fintechs and the types of fintechs that can
mm,
emanate from the conversation of building up businesses, and
yes.
again tells us which level of fintechs we are dealing with at a point. And the highest
Yeah.
of them, electronic money issuers or mobile
Mm,
money players.
mm, That's insightful. Honestly, Eben, like the insights you have when it comes to the journey that we've gone through, especially from a very infrastructure perspective, is, I believe, it's information that a lot of people don't have. And I want to find out from your point of view as well. Based on where we've come from, what do you think is next to be done, especially in the roadmap of Ghana's fintech journey? What do you think still needs to be improved?
Right. Thank you very much, Ammishaddai. So in recent times, um, there has been the conversation on open banking, for instance. Now,
Yes.
open banking allows banks and fintechs to have a handshake and partnership
Mm-hmm,
where
mm-hmm,
they can actually, fintechs on one hand can actually have access to bank data.
mm-hmm,
So, for
mm-hmm,
instance, if a customer wants a loan from a fintech, the fintech
mm-hmm,
can rely on the credit worthiness data of the
mm-hmm.
customer from the bank. So
Yes.
that's a very important conversation which is currently
Yes.
ongoing. And
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
aware the regulator is working on getting some of these things in terms of policy setup, because Nigeria
Mm,
already has taken the lead
yes.
in
Hearing my
conversation.
voice.
So clearly, that's like one of the major
Mm,
drivers of
mm,
of the fintech conversation in Ghana, and will
mm,
propel the growth of our
mm,
fintech industry to the next level.
mm.
So that's a major point. And then
Okay.
again, artificial intelligence.
Mm.
Now, AI is driving almost everything we have in terms of technology. And
Tell
I
me
must say,
about it.
for
Mm-hmm.
instance, lending or lendtech offerings. I think the last session with Mr. Joe Jackson was an eye opener of
Mm,
how the lendtech conversation has shaped up
mm,
the whole ecosystem. And I must say
mm,
that for you to be able to determine credit worthiness, you cannot decouple artificial intelligence from
mm.
offerings. And so basically,
Okay.
that will also be like a major talking point and a
Mm.
major catalyst for fintech related products and services.
Okay.
Again, I believe that regulatory technology or RegTech is also
Mm.
very important as far as moving into the
Okay.
future is concerned, because essentially, while we are looking at fintech offerings, we also need to make sure that we put in the cushions that
Mm.
will allow for some level of enhanced security, and also ensure that AML is managed in a
Mm.
certain context. And so
That's
regulatory
anti-technology.
technology
Yes.
products.
Mm.
Pardon me, Avishadai?
Oh, I was just making sure we all understood AML as anti-money
Ah,
laundering. That's
okay,
what
right,
the
right.
newbies.
So
Mm.
all right, right. So clearly, some of these policies will also come in, and then again,
Mm.
we are moving also into an era of super apps, which is also
Okay.
very
Yes.
important. So
Okay.
super apps also shape the conversation. I must say that during this same period, not to take us back, with
Yeah.
this e-transfer revolution, there
Mm-hmm.
were banks that actually relied on e-transfer platform also for their mobile banking offerings. So I
Mm.
remember the likes of Zenith Bank having come out with products that was riding on e-transacts offering, which was
Okay.
called by then. And then
Okay.
Intercontinental Bank, now Access Bank, also had their iMobile. And
Mm.
then there was also U Mobile by UBA. Now, these were the
Mm.
banks that had these sets of offerings. I also
Mm.
remember that interoperability started from this period, because at
Mm.
that point, customers could actually use their Mastripe cards across these banks, where
Okay.
one could actually use their card in another ATM
Okay.
of a partner bank within the same circle in terms of
Mm.
UBA, Access Bank. in terms of Zenith Bank. And so the earlier forms of local interoperability platforms also emanated from this period.
Right. Ebenezer, thank you so much for that insight. And just this week, I also came across the article on the SEC finally giving the go-ahead for crowdsourcing and giving the guidelines for that. Can you comment on that a bit before we move on to the fintech journey in Ghana? Did you see that article?
Well, I haven't seen that, but I think it's a welcoming news because I mean today, crowdfunding solutions is also like a major talking point.
Yes.
Some fintechs have already rolled out crowdfunding solutions, and it
Mm-hmm.
helps us to more or less gain that independence from foreign crowdfunding products,
Exactly.
and it gives us
Yes.
that leverage to also have an ecosystem that will be developed with the understanding of our market, and also
Yes.
will appeal to our consumer segments as we have them locally. Because I mean, consumer behavior sometimes
Yeah.
is localized, and so it's.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of these indications are very, very viable indications, and I'm sure it's a welcoming news for all of us
Yeah,
as industry
it's so
players.
exciting. It's so exciting. I remember back then when we are doing some of our accelerator programs, a couple of ideas to help with startups in crowdfunding were all rejected because there were no SEC regulations and they weren't allowing them to set up either. So this is exciting as long as Ghana regulation and policy framework is involved. And Eben, you have worked across different spectrums. You've worked in the banks, you've worked with telcos, you've worked with fintechs. What was the main difference in approach when you were doing fintech business, and how should early stage companies be able to approach them when it comes to partnerships? You have a wealth of experience dealing with all of these, so can you give us some insider information?
Right. Thank you very much. So, just as you rightly intimated, I've had the opportunity to work across different industries within the digital financial services
Mm.
industries. And I must say that one thing is clear:
Okay.
there has to be a perfect handshake between all players. And
Mm.
I have an article also on the need for banks to have a partnership with fintechs. That's
Okay.
very, very important. That's very, very important. So today, some banks have set up fintech departments, and they are
Okay.
really championing such interactions in order to
Okay.
ensure that there is that perfect handshake of making sure collaborations are done. And then these banks also use this as a means to, as it were, create some level of economies of scale to ensure also that level of ability to offer innovative products and solutions to uh, the various customer segments that are emanating today, which is quite different from the old set of customers that
Mm.
banks used to have in the past. I had the opportunity to set up a whole product as a
Okay.
startup on as a fintech startup, and I must
Okay.
say that one of the key things that I realized was that you simply need to make sure that you deliver your product across different channels. If you're not
Mm.
able to do that, you cannot actually win in the market because I mean
Okay.
today customers have different appetites. While some
Mm.
may want to have their product on the phone, some may want to have same also I mean via web and all that.
Yes.
So clearly that's a
Mm.
very major pointer. Some may
Mm.
also have it via a point of sale terminal. And so
Mm.
really study the market, do a lot of analysis, do a lot
Mm.
of customer engagement to also see how best customer pain points can be alleviated. And so it's very
Mm.
crucial that such works are done thoroughly on the field to ascertain the
Mm.
kind of roadmap that can help develop products.
Ebenezer, that's so spot on. And thank you so much for sharing that. If you're just joining, I'm having a conversation with Ebenezer Yalley. He's a Ghana director for the Fintech magazine Africa, but he has had a background in working with the entire fintech spectrum from startups to fintechs to telcos and to regulatory agencies. And today he's sharing some of his insights, and we've got to learn the fintech journey from a regulatory perspective, how we started with as far back in 2006 when he helped pioneer e-transact in Ghana all the way to where we currently are. Yeah, so let's go on. Ebenezer, thank you so much for what you've shared so far. You shared your journey, you shared your experiences. Now let's look at where we currently are with Ghana and fintech compared to our other countries in Africa. And I just want to find out, are there any kind of players that you think are needed to make the space as competitive as it is maybe in Nigeria, Kenya, Rwanda? Are there any more players you think are needed in this space?
Right. I mean, that's a very interesting question. I must say that when it comes to players, we already have a good number of players.
Mm,
Very key fintechs have already crossed the borders and are doing great. The likes of ZPay,
mm,
Insano, very
mm,
great fintech players today across the industry.
mm,
And clearly, they will continue to expand across the sub region and even
mm.
beyond, so to speak. So, in terms of players, I believe that we are pretty much fine.
Okay.
They come in every now and then, and
Mm,
and and it's important that we also embrace the different players also in the ecosystem. I
mm.
must emphasize that one of the major things that will shape fintech offerings going
Okay.
into the next medium term is clearly with cross-border payments. And with cross-border payments,
Okay.
revolutions such as the Pan-African payments and settlement systems is a
Yes.
key enabler.
Okay.
And clearly, today, in fintechs are being invited to partner banks because
Mm,
banks basically are the holders of such APIs as partners
mm.
of PAPs. And so fintechs can actually leverage on this particular offering, and
Okay.
customers of fintechs can actually send money across the African continent, uh,
Yes.
local currency, in local
Yes.
currency. And
In local.
that's very
Mm.
interesting. So it changes more or less
Very.
the dynamic of cross-border payments, and
Mm,
this is a very important proposition and will
mm.
create a certain level of USP in the market in the years to come.
Absolutely.
So
Mm.
clearly, once PAPS is able to, as it were, create that kind of community where
Okay.
all African countries are able to come on board to
Mm.
be partners, then fintechs can actually leverage on that. So there will no longer be any barrier in terms of sending money across. So if you have a
Mm.
trade partner in Gambia, you should be able to send money to that trade partner in Gambia. And the
Mm-hmm.
figures are interesting, Ammishaddai. The figures are very interesting. If you
Oh,
look
I
at the
would love
trade
to
route,
hear it.
if you look
Mm-hmm.
at the trade routes, for instance, between ourselves and our friendly neighbors, Nigeria, our
Mm-hmm.
brothers, and then you have also trade routes like with Sierra Leone, between Ghana and Sierra Leone. These
Yes.
are very interesting conversations that probably all industry players are continually engaging in,
Mm.
and so it gives us a certain perspective of
Okay.
how the industry is going to shape up. So you can
Okay.
use your mobile, for instance, to do some of these transactions,
Yeah.
there are no limitations. And so
Mm.
cross-border payment, for instance, is also very, very important. And if you
Mm.
go to my YouTube page with my name, Ebenezer Yalley, I
Okay.
talk about cross-border payment, and it's
Mm.
really important. Again, I believe that agency banking has evolved also as a
Mm.
very important product for banks.
Okay.
But there will be the need for a level of handshake in terms of one particular platform that can,
Mm.
as it were, put together all the bank's APIs into a single bucket. And that can also be
Okay.
an interesting conversation where fintechs can
Mm.
actually drive this conversation. So some of these innovations are really key and will serve the purposes that we all have to put our hands together on to be able to achieve the objectives that we've set for ourselves.
Yes, so if you're tuning in, I've been speaking with Ebenezer Yalley. He's the Ghana director for the Fintech magazine Africa, and he has been sharing from his wealth of experience working across all the spectrums in the fintech journey in Ghana, from fintech to telco to regulatory bodies. And now he has just mentioned a very important element when it comes to innovation in fintech in Ghana and across the country, which is cross-border payment and getting access to specific APIs from banks. Ebenezer, that is one of the most important conversations we've had forever. Why can't I send money from Ghana to Togo? Why can't I send money from Ghana to Nigeria, to South Africa? And what has been the delay? Thank you for that insight. Are you hearing any whispers on timelines? Should we get excited, or is this going to be a conversation that's still being had? I know some banks have started allowing you to pay from Ghana across. I heard one fintech that we know in Ghana has also gotten license from BOG to start letting you make transactions from Ghana to other parts. But is this something that we can all enjoy soon, or is it already happening?
This is something that is actually ongoing, and
Okay.
all partner banks of PAPS are being asked to activate this particular kind of partnership. And so it's
Oh,
something that is readily ongoing, and it's actually welcoming, just as I intimated earlier on. It doesn't really require a lot of approval, so to speak. Fintechs can easily
okay.
plug into any partner bank of PAPS, and will enjoy this particular
Mm,
offering.
mm.
Customers can also have access to same.
Perfect. Thank you, Ebenezer. And just before we wrap up, for those of our listeners who haven't come across you yet, who you are, what you do, can you give us a quick bio of yourself, who you are, what you do with the Fintech magazine Africa, and then also please go ahead to tell us about your YouTube channel and what are some of the contents that we can find there.
Right, thank you. So once again, Ebenezer Yalley here. Basically, what I do is I've had some experience across the fintech and digital financial services industries, and
Mm,
largely I've been involved in sales, business development,
mm,
product management, uh, and that has actually been like my core qualities and skills that I've
yeah.
gathered over the years, over a decade
Mm,
experience in this space.
mm,
And so, I mean, based on that, I decided just to create a YouTube channel, for instance, that can help educate customers and industry players about various offerings that we may probably have some level of challenges in terms of
mm,
grasping, if you like, the meaning of these offerings. And so,
mm,
on my YouTube channel, I talk about product development,
mm,
management. I talk about uh, essentially digital product development management, because it's a new area actually in the ecosystem,
mm,
and most people do not really have a lot of understanding when it comes to that aspect. It has
mm,
more or less like a mixture of project management, but again,
mm,
also an understanding of product development, where you are able to apply the new product development process through
mm,
to making sure that you have certain basic concepts of technical product development, more or less interfacing with programmers and engineers and designers.
okay.
That's also a very important conversation. And then I talk about digital financial services and
Okay.
then fintech offerings. So for Fintech Magazine Africa, just as Ammishaddai you are doing, we are also involved in trying to set up a few conversations that are quite interesting,
Yes.
where we can actually follow, and then also we try to make sure that we broaden the conversation on especially financial inclusion.
Mm,
So Fintech Magazine Africa is also working with Financial Inclusion Africa.
mm,
Essentially the same kind of approach, because it's the same
okay.
entity. And so
Mm,
basically advancing the conversation on
mm,
financial inclusion, because it's broader than we think. Financial inclusion just doesn't happen with owning a bank account. It goes
yeah.
beyond owning a bank account. And
Mm,
so these are some of the things that we talk about. And
mm,
and I'm sure we can all share such perspectives
yeah.
to ensure that we make the needed progress that we all expect in terms of what fintech is all about.
Ebenezer, thank you so much. This has been a worthwhile 30 minutes. Thank you for the great level of insight that you've shared with us, and for our viewers and our listeners. If you tuned in, this has been Innovator Spotlight with the Ghana Innovation Journal. My name is Ammishaddai Ofori, co-founder and director of Innovation Spark. And today we had the pleasure of speaking with Ebenezer Yalley. He's the Ghana director of Fintech Magazine Africa. Thank you for joining us on our journey of Ghana's fintech journey. We'll be back same time next week, Thursday, with another guest explaining how we have come in the journey of fintech in Ghana. Ebenezer, thank you so much. Find Ebenezer on all platforms, especially on his YouTube channel, Ebenezer Yalley, where you can get insights on digital products across the continent. Thank you. Speak soon.